Hello and welcome to our weekly film show with critic Lisa Nesselson joining us at a very safe social distance. Hi, Lisa. Now, we're starting off with a glimmer of hope for film festivals. Almost every week we hear of another festival being cancelled due to the ongoing pandemic, and some of the summer events will be scaled down, or they'll be doing a mix of in-person and online screenings due to all the travel restrictions. But here in France, Marseille's FID Festival is going ahead. It's billing itself as the world's first post-COVID-19 film festival. Lisa, tell us more.
Well, France is credited with hosting the world's first motion picture screening for paying customers. And this coming December 28th, we will be celebrating 125 years since the first Lumiere Brothers film show here in Paris. So it's fitting to be first again. The Marseille International Documentary Film Festival, known by its initials, FID, runs July 22nd through the 26th, the first in-person lineup per usual film festival since we all learned to be wary of COVID-19, is showing films from 30-some countries and 46 world premieres. It's not online. It's in public spaces where, of course, strict hygiene precautions will be enforced. The organizers have said, quote, "We're convinced that cinema is a living organism, as fragile as it is powerful," end quote. And that's why they've opted for a real event. FID has a reputation for high-quality programming. They receive almost as many submissions as Cannes does, but exclusively nonfiction. And it's definitely an honor to be chosen for their competition or sidebars.
Yeah, very high quality of filmmaking there. Well, here's a taste of 3 new documentaries slated for Marseille this year.
German filmmaker Angela Schanleck will receive the festival's Grand Prix d'honneur with 8 of her films screening. There will also be a tribute to French actor Michel Piccoli, who died recently. Documentary filmmakers sometimes risk their lives to get footage, so I think the least we can do is possibly risk ours to watch the results. Actually, there's absolutely no reason to think that the first post-COVID fest will be hazardous to anybody's health. I've been thinking that future documentary festivals will inevitably show films about the reality we're going through now of masks, social distancing, the collapse of certain industries, the rise of others, movies about the lives of children born in 2020, and comparisons of how different countries managed the threat. Let's hope they're all in the past tense.
Indeed. Well, here in France, there are no big Hollywood films out yet this summer, so audiences are going to see more French films on the whole. And one of them is new release Tout Simplement Noir, which translates as Just Plain Black. Now, this is a comedy about French racism, which wouldn't normally strike me as funny. So does this film manage to make it so?
Well, as seen by comedian Jean-Pascal Zadi, who stars and co-directs with John Wax, there are quite a few laughs to be mined from ordinary French attitudes toward Black citizens. This star-studded satire had the 6th strongest box office debut for a French film so far this year. Zadi is a minor actor and rapper pushing 40 who plays a minor actor pushing 40, intent on organizing a march in Paris to call attention to the plight of Black people in French society.
That all sounds very familiar. Now, you mentioned that it's quite star-studded. That could be why it's doing so well at the box office?
Well, Zadi and Wax convinced an impressive number of French actors, stand-up comedians, musicians, old and new, to play along in ways that are not always flattering to their real-life public images. The cast is obviously having fun. Mostly Black, some North Africans, 2 Jews. That sounds like a setup for a joke that takes place in a bar. But the entire film sends up the French entertainment industry and the ludicrous received wisdom about Black people. If there's a way to say exactly the wrong thing during an encounter that's going well, Zadi usually finds it.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Tout Simplement Noir.
Pourquoi tu nous as pas appelés pour ta marche?
Ouais. Vous, c'est-à-dire?
Nous, les rebeux. Et les juifs. Marcher contre le racisme, marcher contre les discriminations, marcher arabes et noirs.
Et juifs.
Et j'ai que deux mains, j'ai que deux mains.
Les Noirs et les Arabes, on est des frères, ok, mais on est des frères que quand ça vous arrange. Je sais très bien. Évidemment, qui dans ce salon laisserait sa sœur se mettre avec un Noir? Qui?
J'ai pas de sœur, moi.
Je pense que tout le monde avait envie de raconter cette histoire. En fait, c'était l'histoire de montrer que l'identité noire, la communauté noire, en fait, c'est pas si simple que ça, c'est multiple, c'est complexe. Et en fait, le film mettait en avant l'humanité de tout le monde. Et je pense que les gens, à ce moment-là précis, quand je les ai appelés, ils avaient envie de fédérer autour d'un projet qui pouvait montrer que, voilà, on est tous français, on est noirs dans le film, mais finalement, être noir, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Est-ce que c'est aussi simple que ça? Est-ce que la communauté noire, ça existe? Enfin, lancer le débat, lancer le questionnement autour de ces questions identitaire.
So, Lisa, this is a comedy. Did you laugh?
I chuckled. I didn't find it uproarious, but it's definitely kind of ballsy. I'm not at all sure the humor will travel outside French language country. There is a terrific sequence I imagine might make some humorless heads explode among the politically correct beyond France. So in that scene, Matthew Kassovitz plays a determined film director who for over a decade has been planning a hard-hitting film about colonial mistreatment of blacks. Zadi shows up for the audition, and Kassovitz immediately starts complaining that he's not a Negro. He's too contemporary in his blackness. Now, Zadi doesn't want to blow the audition, but he points out that, well, yeah, he can play a Negro. When Kassovitz starts measuring Zadi's facial features the way a slave trader would, well, I laughed, and so did most of the audience I saw it with on Bastille Day. Now, if you go, stay through the very end of the credits as our protagonist insinuates himself into major events throughout history, Zelig-like.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Mathieu Kassovitz there. 25 years ago, a film he wrote and directed was released, La Haine. That went on to be a watershed movie for France. It's being re-released at the moment. So tell us why La Haine, which translates as hate in English, is just so important.
Well, when Laj Lee accepted a long string of awards for his recent film Les Miserables, he often mentioned that seeing La Haine as a young man was what made him want to be a director. It inspired many future actors, directors, even producers. It gets cited a lot. It's the story of three friends in a housing project, an Arab, a black guy, and a lower-class Jew, played by Vincent Cassel, who was just starting out, and a very eventful day filled with violence and confrontation. Now, in the quarter century since it premiered in competition in Cannes, actors of North African heritage have moved into the spotlight as some of the highest paid and most beloved creative talents in France. You can't really say the same for blacks yet, except for Omar Sy. Music and sports, yes. Film and television, not so much. The film confused some critics in the US at the time, even though the slangy subtitles were quite excellent in English, because Americans found it hard to believe that a black guy, a Jewish guy, and an Arab guy would have grown up together. Nobody would take issue with that today. That is progress, but it seemed odd back then.
Okay, well, let's revisit La Haine.
Et alors, qu'est-ce que tu vas en faire?
Vas-y, arrête.
Qu'est-ce que tu vas en faire?
Vas-y, on verra si Abdel meurt. Vas-y, à mon tour, là.
Attends, tu veux buter un keuf?
Quoi, tu connais un autre moyen, toi, pour se faire respecter?
Et tu crois qu'aligner un Schmitt, ça va ramener le respect?
Le respect, je sais pas, mais en tout cas, ça rétablira la balance.
Si t'avais besoin d'un calife, t'avais qu'à me le demander.
C'est pas pareil, celui-là.
Ah, parce que tu te crois en mission?
Quoi, qu'est-ce que tu me parles de mission, là? Ça va, quoi, c'est moi qui l'ai vétru, c'est tout, me prends pas la tête.
Et ça va lui faire du bien, Abdel?
Abdel, je sais pas, mais à nous, ouais.
Now, I remember being so impressed by this film. What has stuck with you since you first saw it?
Well, I've never forgotten how delighted Syed Tamagui's character is when they go into Paris and an adult addresses him as Monsieur. He's just thrilled that somebody treated him with verbal respect. Now, this was at the start of the loose genre of so-called banlieue films set in or starring characters from the low-income housing projects outside Paris, where second and third generation African and North African immigrants had been more or less parked with poor whites and no obvious path toward upward mobility in French society. The film holds up as a layered conundrum that builds to a stunning crescendo. La Haine is an intelligent take on an idiotic reality, the mutual mistrust, contempt, and yes, hatred between the police and France's disenfranchised younger citizens.
And indeed, that's an issue that's not gone away in the last 25 years. Now, that means there's certainly plenty for us to be taking in here in France, but elsewhere, cinemas are only just starting to open up. That's the case in China after 6 months with their doors firmly shut, making it one of the very last territories to fire up the projectors again. Now, tell us a bit more about the situation there, Lisa.
Well, theaters reopened July 20th in the world's second largest film market, but only in cities and provinces considered low risk, meaning no active new cases for a month. So Beijing does not yet qualify. Shanghai is in the clear. An online sale of tickets was impressively brisk for the 23rd Shanghai International Film Festival, which runs July 25th to August 2nd. They sold 110,000 tickets in 10 minutes. When Hollywood decides to stop having cold feet about releasing much-awaited big movies, Chinese attendance will be absolutely crucial. Now, Christopher Nolan's Tenet was just put off again indefinitely. From a health standpoint, Hollywood could open big films in China or here in France, but they're afraid of piracy before American audiences get a chance to see them on the big screen. New rules for Chinese cinemas mandate only 30% capacity, half as many daily screenings, and forbid the sale or eating of snacks.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that roundup, Lisa. We'll leave you with some scenes from China and those happy film fans returning to the cinemas. Do remember to check out our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.